Where you going? What are you drinking tonight? Let's keep 'em flowing. Where do you come from? Where are you going? What are you feeling tonight? And what are you showing? Where do you come from? 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 Where are you going? What are you drinking tonight? Let's keep 'em flowing.
Whoa, I need to do a fade out of that one. But yes, we are here. Super PlayStation Bros. And let me super professional here. Change the background.
I wasn't gonna say anything, but it's like last minute. There's not really been much going on. Should we do something? Shouldn't we do something? The fact that we're here, that's a bit of a miracle, and people should be grateful and appreciative that we've turned up on this rather actually quite sunny Monday morning here in the UK.
Oh, you're having a sunny. My day looks like my background right now outside.
Well, I mean, Canada has been on fire for a little while now, so
Yeah,
you're
more
doing
fires
all right.
today. Oh, my eyes actually, to be honest, have been actually affected. Like I'll go outside, I'm getting super irritated in them. I'm getting like a bit of a cough, itching in the back of my throat. It's not fantastic. And hopefully they come up with some solution or we're gonna have to relocate. Oh my gosh.
Oh, you're gonna have to relocate. It's that bad for you guys, is it?
My wife's like, this is news to me. No, I'm just saying. I mean, we've been talking about it, but we can't live with a whole summer of fire seasons. I don't know, maybe Vancouver
The
Island.
Aussies do it annually. Like if they can do it, you guys can do it. I'm quite sure. You're more chill
Or
than they are.
we have a better air purification system in the home. Something
That
around
might
there.
be the one. That might be the one.
ISO Motion Gaming. Good morning. 7 a.m. I believe you're out in no, that can't be Hawaii, is it? 7 a.m. I think man, that is
Hey,
that
it's
is
5
early,
p.m.
my
somewhere
friend.
in the
Well,
world,
good
mate.
morning.
Like,
Good
it's
morning.
time
We
to
we are
get
going to
drinking,
be.
yeah.
Yeah. We got all the time zones here. Well, without further ado, what have you been up to this week? Have you been gaming on the old box itself?
Oh, I've been gaming on the old box, not like the last couple of weeks where I've come in with not a lot of anything. So there's been a new release on PlayStation VR. We'll get into that a bit more later. But the biggest exclusive of the game year thus far, released last week, Final Fantasy 16, biggest exclusive for the PlayStation side of things anyway. And I have been diving into that. I have been loving every second of it so far. 8 hours into the story, and it just keeps getting better. It's kind of like European high fantasy. Think like J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings type fantasy, mixed with a bit of Bleach, that amazing over-the-top sword-fighting Japanese anime, and some kaiju thrown in for good measure. Just Godzilla appearing out of nowhere, just because they can, and wrap that up in a beautiful story. And that is what I have been experiencing for the past 4 days, and I've loved every second of it so far. I've still got a long way to go with the rest of it, but if it stays this good, I'm going to be a very happy camper by the end of it.
Well, it's shaping up to be a ridiculously amazing looking game from everything I've seen. I've hated jumping into people's stream though and just seeing people kill innocent animals because I'm like, what? My heart goes out to all the digital animals, but it's like I'm resource collecting. I'm like, I'd rather you fight like something trying to kill you than go out and
They're
find
not.
like
They're
a
not innocent.
chocobo. The
They're not
chocobos?
innocent.
Come on.
They are evil little things, chocobos, in this one. They are violent, horrible little
No.
creatures. And when I say little, they're taller than me, so you know. But they just jump out at you. You're going along, you're collecting your resources, you're bobbing about the world as you do. And these chocobos are like, I am going to take you out. I'm going to peck your brains out through your ears, sort of thing. Well, I've got no option but to fight back at this point. And the blue ones are by far the worst. They are so aggressive. So aggressive. So yeah, I'm fighting back and saving my own life. I understand people taking them out ahead of time.
What's going on, Ray? The gaming cyborg and Simply Pwned Gaming. Hey, such handsome men. Yes, thank you, good sir. Ambiguous as ever, folks. How we doing? Doing fantastic this morning. Hope you're doing well, William. And not this morning for me, but this afternoon for you, right, Oregon?
Indeed. I've had a full work day behind me thus far. I've got a bit more to do after we finish this show, but it is just like type up a couple of notes and close the laptop down, essentially. That's the end of the day there. So yeah, I've had a full-on day so far. Brain's already falling out the ears, and it's only Monday. So, you know, only 4 more days to go.
Yeah. Nice.
But what about yourself, man? What have you been up to?
I have been locked into. Well, let's start with the other than I've been locked into. Among Us, okay? That's happening with the community Fridays and Mondays, depending. You got to look out for social media. I think we're going to get together on Monday today in about 3 hours. That's an absolute blast where we get together and we just gaslight each other. We don't play it the right way. We play it the fun way. And everyone jumps in. And yeah, it's just an absolute riot. So I always get up to that. And there's the clan runs I'm doing. We're having fun with that, getting into raids. But this week we hit an absolute wall where the second encounter we just couldn't get past. It was error after error after error. And then people left.
Understandable,
So
yeah. You're going away.
usually I'm like pure clear hour and a half max. But this week we couldn't get it together. And if I'm not mistaken, do you have a clan run going up, or did that already happen?
It's going on later this week. We've got
This
a
week.
King's Fall on Thursday to try and get through.
Oh, it's already. Well, I will pop in anyways. Usually, and somebody will drop.
Somebody will drop,
we'll
yeah. So stick a name down and see what happens, yeah. Destiny's
Exactly.
always fun. I've jumped into a bit of it the last couple of weeks, just jumping in with clan members and friends, people asking for, oh, can you help with this? Can you help with that? Getting through like the top GMs and what have you. So it's like, I keep forgetting it's there. It's not made of Final Fantasy for me at the moment. So, you know, I'm struggling to go back to it. But you said there was one that you've got into that's got its hooks in you.
Yeah, and that's absolutely this is the background going on here. It's actually down for the next 2 days, but it's been Diablo. I'm just working on my build, getting my Necromancer up, hopping in with a group of everyone who's around, just getting into the fun. Actually, 2 nights ago, we were just all hanging out in Discord. We had Callie, we had Wilson, we had Rouster, and we were all hanging out in a group of 4 doing a nightmare dungeon, and then all of a sudden the Butcher comes out, which is a random spawn boss who just absolutely destroys things, and we all took him out, and it was just a blast of a moment. And so just having those fun times, getting through the game, building your character. We'll see how long I have, because I feel like I'm reaching, like once I complete my character and just have him OP, we'll see if I go back after that. Because I feel like I'm starting to reach sort of the pinnacle of the game. But you know, it's there. It's fun to have good times with your friends, and it's definitely my catch right now after beating Zelda last week. So
yeah. I totally get it. It's one of those. I feel like everybody's on one of 2 games at the moment. They're either on Diablo 4 or they are on Final Fantasy 16. and whichever one you're on, you're there for a long while. You're having yourselves a fantastic time, and they don't need to be a forever game. Not every game needs to be live service. PlayStation, maybe take note of that one for like next showcase and give us some more single player stuff. That would be nice. But not everything needs to be a forever living game. Sometimes that one and done experience is exactly what you need, and it's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, if that's all Diablo is for you, why not take it as that beautiful one and done experience, all of the joy that you've been getting with it, and accept it for what it's giving you. And by the sounds of it, you're having a whale of a time getting to that point.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It may not be a game where the battle pass is the route I take, just because it seems to be mostly aesthetic at that point. And I'm just looking to have fun with friends. And if I've already completed a master built character, I'm just going to bring him in whenever I want to play with friends, because that's just what I'm there for. And yeah, I play the game out. I mean, there's only so much I can kill hordes of enemies the same way. So.
You say that. Wibble's been doing it for about 30 years at this point through the previous 3. So
What?
like, you can keep doing it, apparently.
Yeah, I know people who like create characters, sell them off, and oh my gosh. And so that's sort of the reason why I see, because uh with each season you have to create a new character from the very beginning, which I found astonishing when I first found out. But then as I sort of grew to realize the business aspect behind it, behind third parties creating these characters and selling them off, I understand why they locked it to that. Is to make people spend more money.
100%, 100%. Anything
Yeah.
that tries to hang around and be a persistent game for multiple months, multiple years, multiple anything at a time, they've got to look at different monetization routes, and they will take the path of least resistance. Like, if you're not going to buy something, if you're not going to pay for something as a player, they're not going to put that out there. They're going to put something out there that you guys want, or the player base as a whole wants, at a price that they're willing to pay for it. That is how microtransactions came around. That is how they will stay. And we can all say, oh, vote with your wallets, but there's always going to be people who just buy it because they want it and they don't care about evil corporations and such. They just want to have the nice, pretty thing for their own joy. And why should we stop them?
Exactly. Kelly Drew Vos, what's up, coming in with the hot takes? Halo coming to PlayStation. LOL, just joking. Good morning, everybody. I know there's been a lot of talk about PlayStation and the new FTC hearings, and how PlayStation was going to have certain exclusives and Microsoft, but we'll get into that. Hopefully Dorgon has some background information on that, because I just have the blogs open. But we'll riff on it, if anything. Let's go over some blog stuff. Let's go over some blog stuff. How developers of Final Fantasy 16, I assume that's 16 with all the Roman numerals.
That's X for a 10, V for a 5, and I for 1.
Right, and the V has to be before the I, because if the I's before the V, that's a 4, right?
Yeah, it's additional as you go across. It gets a bit more complicated when you get into like the hundreds and the thousands and such. But basically, it's additional. So your first number is like your denomination of 10, 50, 100, whatever the case may be. Then it goes 1 for 1, 2 for 2, 3 for 3, and then it starts going with your multiplication, subtraction. If a 1 is before a 5, that's a 4. And I didn't expect to be getting into teaching Roman numerals this morning.
I'm like, oh my gosh, can I take notes? What's happening here? Here's my pen. So my question to you is exactly this. The blog says how Final Fantasy 16 respects the series of past, embraces the future. Oh my gosh, the lightning and thunder. It's looking like this outside.
That. Yeah,
it's looking like this outside, I'm telling you.
That's got some volume to it. Some presence.
Yeah, that's what the noise cancellation. Jeez. Sorry about that. But yes, as a Final Fantasy player, do you feel that this is what's happening with the game? Is it respecting the series past and embracing the future? Is that what you see happening, or what is your take on the game so far?
My take is not from a position where I can honestly say. The last Final Fantasy that I truly played before 16 was 7.
Was 7?
And
Yeah,
that
I've
was
seen
the
that.
original 7 back on PlayStation 1 era type consoles and
Oh,
devices and what have
really?
you.
I thought it was the new one when you brought that up.
I played it a little bit, like, and it was Final Fantasy 7 just looking prettier, but I'd already played it and I couldn't get back into it with the commitment that was required at that point in my life. Going back to it now might be able to, but yeah, it's Final Fantasy 7. I know there's a few changes, so I do need to go through and play it. But that was the one that I played prior to 16 and got into. So for me, the differences between those two games are ginormous. They are astronomical, and I haven't really seen that evolution that we've had within the series from 7 through to 16. There's 11 numbered titles. There's 3 13s. There's an MMO version online with FF14. And it's like every iteration of Final Fantasy is different. It's why some people hold certain ones in such high regard and hold other ones in such low regard. For me, the more hack and slash combat is much more accommodating, much more welcoming. I don't mind turn-based combat, but for me, that belongs in games like Pokemon and Temtem, that sort of creature capture type games where you've got strengths and weaknesses and there's multiplications and you're having to figure out what can do what, what's the best play, and so on and so forth. You don't often, or at least I felt you didn't often get that in the Final Fantasy titles. It was how big's your sword, how much armor are you wearing, how quickly can you swing it to knock the other guy out, sort of thing. So I was never a huge fan of that, and this speaks to me, the sort of distant fan of the series who's respected it and has one or two games that they like. This is a huge advancement and a huge positive for me. But of course, I do see people who've played every single game out there saying that it's undermined the series completely, and it doesn't like it doesn't even look or feel like a Final Fantasy anymore. And I can't say it does or doesn't because I am not that Final Fantasy player, but I can look at it from an Assassin's Creed perspective. And when we went to this whole massive open world RPG versions of, say, Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I felt exactly the same at that point. I felt like it completely undermined the series, undermined everything that this core fan base had been there through thick and thin for. And suddenly everything that we wanted, the guys who'd kept this series afloat, was gone in favor of some newcomers who might make them a bit more money. And I can see parallels between what I experienced on the Assassin's Creed side of things and what some players are saying on this Final Fantasy side of things. I can't speak to it myself. All I can say is that I am loving 16. I am loving the game, the combat, the story, the over the top moments. I think it's fantastic, but I see what others are saying, and I've got relative experiences that I can attribute to the same feeling. So yeah, I can see how they've got to where they are, looking back through how other iterations have gone, like 15 and 14 and co. But I'm not one to say that, yes, it definitely respects the series past while embracing the future. I'm not the right sort of fan to say that.
Yeah. That's a great take on it. I can obviously see why the sort of hack and slash is separating itself from the factors that came into turn-based combat. So, um, you know what? They're saying from active time battling to fighting in real time, exactly what you were touching on. It's a big change. For me, it's welcomed. I'm not a big fan of turn-based. Uh, but yeah, they're sort of going in a new direction. And for me, when I look at the game, what they keep is sort of the characters, the chocobos, the atmosphere, the art style, the character models, like all of that, it feels like it's within that universe, right?
Yeah, like we say, every single one is different. So 8 is different than 7, 1 is different than 16, and so on and so forth. Like different settings, different. Like there was a car in the last one in Final Fantasy 15. There was
Yes, I've heard a
cars,
lot
giant
about this.
mechs.
car and the car gate.
And the car can fly and all this sort of stuff. Not that that's in this one. There's not really any metal. It's very medieval fantasy, akin to like
Right.
the writings of Raymond E. Feist and co. And yeah, every single one's different. So some are going to float some people's boats, some aren't going to float other people's boats. And I honestly, I would be very surprised if there is a single person out there who likes every single Final Fantasy game. I would find that quite hard to believe with how vastly different they can all be.
So my question to you is, does Final Fantasy, oh, this is Assassin's Creed, take advantage of the controller, the
It does,
DualSense
yes.
Edge? Do you
Yeah.
feel unique sort of vibrations? Is the triggers haptic? How does that feel on a PlayStation 5 exclusive? Because that's sort of what they're bringing to the table in terms of what's different from competitors.
Yeah, it has its moments. The controls layout in 16 doesn't lend itself superbly to the DualSense offering feedback. So whereas say with Returnal, you've got a half trigger pull for standard fire and a full trigger pull for alternative fire, there's nothing like that in this game because your combat buttons are your face buttons. So square and triangle are what you're fighting with. So there's not really the sort of feedback through the triggers as you would get in other PS5 exclusives. But the haptics are actually worked in really well. They're quite subtle until you're in cutscenes, and they keep you engaged in a cutscene at that point. You sort of feel the action that's going on that you're otherwise just
Oh, that's
watching.
neat.
There's been so many times I've gone to put the controller down, and then it's done something like, nope, you're staying right here. So yeah, it's a very different way of implementing the DualSense or the DualSense Edge, but I'm quite liking it. It's not Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. It's not Spider-Man. What Spider-Man 2 is probably going to be. It's probably more akin to what God of War Ragnarok did, where it was quite subtle with all of the implementations of the controller. So I'm liking it. I wish there was more. I always wish there was more. But when there is more, my controller dies really quickly. So, it's a bit of a balancing act. And I think they sort of hit it quite right.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. And let me get the link out. Even though Jeff is just trolling me, I thought the link is posted at the top there. If anyone
I
wants
can
to
see
join,
it as a
yes.
pinned comment. Yeah, it's just not within the
Yeah.
chat itself. I think some people, depending what device they're on, they can only scroll through.
Ah, interesting. Thanks for letting me know. Thanks for letting me know there, Jeff. Let me copy that. And we'll put it in here. And yeah, just in case anyone, we're going to have a bit of an open discussion today. Feel free to jump in by. Yes. And I'll have you on for a little talky talk. And
Is that
so
the
that's
correct
enough
link?
Final
That seems
Fantasy.
like the show link
That
to
seems
watch it.
that seems like the show link. You're absolutely right. So feel free to share that link with anybody on your feed, hanging out. You're right. I have to go to No. It's invite guests. I'm so new at this. I've never invited guests before. There we are. There we are. I
That
can do it
looks
right from
better.
here.
Yeah, that looks like the one.
That looks better. Okay. Holy! Did you hear that one?
I heard what sounded like something falling over, like a dull thud.
The dog just went in the crate. Oh my, it is howling over here. Jeez. Oh my goodness. Okay. Sorry. Let me bring my focus back. Getting into the next PlayStation blog thing while we're getting bombarded with Thor's lightning here. Discover how Japanese culture inspired the upcoming party brawler Pixel Junk Scrappers Deluxe. So the only sort of experience I've had with the Pixel Junk series is actually thanks to Stadia. I was kind of, as you were, locked in that universe, and they released the Pixel Junk Raiders. And so, from what I understand, is again, they're approaching gaming as Pixel Junk as their overarching IP, and every game underneath has a different twist to it, plays differently, looks differently.
This one, I've not seen or heard about this one, so I'm very interested to find out a bit more.
Yeah,
Party
so
brawlers are
the
always fun anyway. Like things like
yeah,
gang beasts and party animals and so on and so forth. They are always fun, and they're hilarious with a good group of friends to play with.
so
Is
here
this a
we have
2D?
people just yeah, it's like side scrolling 2D. I mean, the Pixel Junk Raiders was this open 3D world, like 3D world. You had weapons, you were going in and it was kind of like an extraction open world melee combat game. So this seems it's just such different directions in all their games. You can see it's like reminds me of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sort of combat here.
Yeah, yeah, it's got quite a bit of Shredder's Revenge feel to it, doesn't it?
Right. So it's cool to see. These guys are obviously firing off on their creativity. There could be a lot of fun to be had here. Look at see the concept versus the final here. Share this tab instead. Uh, I'm not sure how big of a difference we're seeing. Well, I guess somewhat. It's like you could have gone maybe one more step there. I'm sure they may have had the budget, but I mean, this is what happens when sort of creativity just hits the ground and runs. They're like, let's go, let's push this out.
We've got this,
Uh,
we've got these assets, we want to do this cool thing with them. Let's go for it, sort of thing. Yeah.
but there's a lot to be seen here. I'm trying to look for a release date on this party brawler. But yeah, Pixel Junk is coming out with new IPs and they're launching them. It says later this year. And you know what? I'm going to make a prediction because
Go
of
for
this
it.
game. I think it's going to come straight to PS Plus.
You might be right with that one. They've been doing some of the, I suppose it's bigger small titles like Takia, like Humanity, like Stray. These are the big indies, and they've been putting them straight on Plus, and it's done great for those indies. It's done great for the player base. I would not be surprised to see this one be a day one PS Plus release.
Yeah. And you heard the prediction here first. So coming into the mid-year, people, there are a lot of huge sales going on right now. I couldn't believe this, up to 75% on games. So be sure to check all of anything you've had a wish list on. That's why I always wish list things that I'm looking forward to. I mean, Call of Duty, if you wanted to jump in right now. EA Sports FIFA 23, Dead Island 2 Deluxe Edition. This is the time where if you miss it on day one, pick it up at 75% off, right? I mean,
Oh yeah,
uh,
100%.
you can find a full list of games. It's massive. Check out the PS blog. If I'm going to scroll and find, I don't think Forspoken will be on here, but if it
Wulong
is, I'll
Fallen
take a look.
Dynasty is though, and the Callisto
What is
Protocol
Fallen
both are fairly.
Dynasty? Oh,
It's a
Callisto
Souls-like.
Protocol.
Yeah, so Wulong Fallen Dynasty is a
Oh yes,
Souls-like
Wulong.
samurai type game. Need for Speed Unbound, Like a Dragon Machine. The Witch is always on sale,
Callisto.
but that's £12 at the moment here in the UK. They've got some good titles on here for
There's so
not a lot
many.
of money.
There's so many. Where's Wulong? Wulong is on here?
I
Yeah, it
saw it
is.
on the PS
Wow.
Store itself, yeah.
Wow. Wow. So yeah, if you're on PlayStation, missed out on this, 70 up to 75% off. The deluxe edition of WWE 2K23. Another big YouTuber's Life 2. What? I gotta check that out. YouTuber's Life. Oh my god. What, have you seen that series? That's gonna be curious.
I have seen that series and it's hilarious. There's so many things where you look at it and you're like, yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do that.
Really?
Yeah, I do that. Yeah, there's a lot of
Okay.
things. It's a bit meta. It's a bit too on the nose on occasion. You know, Damn, I feel called out here by a video game.
Oh damn, I gotta check that out. That actually that is funny because that sounds cool to me just because it's so relatable.
Yeah, it's one of those. If it's cheap enough, it's worth a punt, worth a quick stream with folks of an evening or something. Just see how far you get. It's fun.
The Witcher 3 is on here, which was a game of the year. Uh, wow. Just, I mean, I would say close to 100 games must be on this list. It's
Oh,
just,
easily. Like sales like this, you get tons, and you've got to remember that the PlayStation 5 is the last two generations as well, so it plays all of your PlayStation 4 titles as well as your PlayStation 5 titles. So of course you've got an 8-year catalog from the previous generation, and then a 3-year
yeah.
catalog from this generation. So yeah, there's loads to be going through.
But there is one notable thing which has never entered the digital space for some odd reason. I want to try the older Armored Core. I feel like they've erased all existence of previous Armored Core.
There is a problem. I'll be back in a sec with the previous Armored Core, and it's this thing.
Yeah, the PS3. Oh my gosh, you have that right there.
I have it right there. I've been trying to create content with it, trying to get the controllers working again, but they didn't get charged for about 5 years. So yeah, I've got to leave them on charge overnight, sort of thing. Yeah, the Armored Core games were very much a PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 IP, most of them being on the PlayStation 3 itself. The PS3 is unique in the world of video game consoles in that it has a completely proprietary GPU and CPU. Right. They were made from the ground up for the PlayStation 3 and they were never properly maxed out during its lifetime. Don't get me wrong, they wouldn't come up to what the PlayStation 5 is doing nowadays, but during its life, before it got replaced by the 4, the 3 was still never maxed. There was still horsepower left in the tank that they could utilize, sort of thing. And because it's proprietary, because it's so complex, so complicated, any of the games that were released on that especially were single platform, that were exclusive to that console, could not then be put onto the newer consoles natively. The only way you could play them is if they were on PlayStation Plus's cloud gaming now. And of course, that requires additional licenses, payments, contracts to be drawn up, and so
Oh,
on
it
and so
was
forth.
on PS Now. Is that what you're saying?
I can't say whether it was. I don't remember seeing it on PS Now, but that would have been the only way for it to be played. And with how niche it's
Yeah.
been as a series previously, it probably wasn't worth the finances. But with a new one coming out, I
How
would
is it
not
not
be
worth the
surprised.
finances? Everything from software touches should be worth the finances.
Nobody knew that until Demon's Souls towards the end of the PlayStation 3 era, though, which hit a much wider demographic audience. So yeah, I could see it from other people's perspectives, from especially from my Sony and from Software's perspective, because what are they getting out of it by putting these things up onto a massive library of games that might just get overlooked? But with this new one coming, and with the bravado and pizzazz that the name From Software now carries, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few of the older ones get added onto PS Plus before this launches.
I hope so. I've been thinking now would be the perfect time to release that last game catalog earlier this year. Build the hype, but it's not happened, and I'm wondering if they're purposely holding it back. Maybe this one is just going to play so much different than any other Armored Core before, and they don't want any experience to be tainted. I'm not sure, but
This is my thoughts as well, especially with a couple of
yeah,
interviews with the director. They're saying it's going to be completely accessible to new players, which is something
right.
previous Armored Core games just weren't. So there's probably going to be a big shakeup of the formula for this one. I still think it'll be difficult, as the Armored Core games always have been, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's too bad it's not multiplayer. I look forward to it. We'll see how it goes. Let's jump into the next one. Throwdown with Cat Bat, Embryo, and N Trophy in Crash Team Rumble. So this game recently released this week. Crash is obviously a big sort of what would you call him? A mascot? I don't know. They kind of dropped Crash from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 5 as their
Yeah,
mascot, and he's sort of a supporting character in the cast.
the problem you face with Crash Bandicoot is he was Naughty Dog's original PlayStation IP, but it was published by Universal. When Naughty Dog wanted out of their Universal contract, the only way that they could do it is by leaving Crash behind. He was the biggest seller for them. And so Universal wanted Crash. Universal also wanted Spyro from Insomniac Games. So they kept those characters, but not the teams that had created them and the love around them. And then they handed them off to other people, and it all went downhill. There were the odd one here and there that were great, like Crash Bash, which is the spiritual precursor to this one. This is meant to be like a spiritual sequel to Crash Bash. But after that, like Cortex Strikes Back, Cortex's Revenge, and a bunch of others, they just never hit. And it bobbed around different ownership, different locations until it landed with Activision and Toys with Bob, who did the Insane trilogy, which was a remake of Naughty Dog's original 3, and 4, which was a completely original game, which was brick hard, but really good. This one I'm not so sure on, because the original, it was only good because there were 4 people sat around a TV together playing against one another. I don't know how well this is going to work with silent people online. It's losing the party game aspect that made Crash Bash the nostalgic, memorable thing that it is. It wasn't actually that good a game in total, but it was the party atmosphere that it brought and everybody playing it together. So I'm not sure on this one. I'd have to get my hands on it and have a play to see, but it's one of those, it's either got to be a bargain bin pickup or come on one of the subscription services for me to give it a go.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. It's too bad, and I guess sort of PlayStation has grown up and they've created their new mascots in God of War and Aloy and Spider-Man. So they've reinvented themselves, which is hard for a company to do, but it's obviously the right move to do.
I think with PlayStation, it was done naturally as well. So as the player base were growing up, so the likes of you and I had a PlayStation 1 in 1997. I got that. And I was 9 years old. I'm now 35 years old. I have grown up with the PlayStation, and the PlayStation, in terms of its aesthetics, its design, and its ergonomics, has grown with me, but so has the content upon it. The mascots have grown with me. The games that I enjoyed way back on the PlayStation 1, I've enjoyed on every generation at a maturity level that I am at that moment in time. I think it's been a very natural reinvention and just a growth of a platform in the most natural way. Unlike those who came into the game a little bit later, like say Microsoft, they had that generation or two behind, and they wanted to come in mature when they were an immature company, if that makes sense. And they pulled it off. Don't get me wrong. The original Xbox and 360 eras were absolutely the bomb, but then they kept trying to push it forward rather than allowing it to happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. They just let it more naturally progress. They obviously just put their resources into where they saw numbers, and that worked for them. I mean, God of War was around very early on, and I feel like it only took a center position later on in sort of their lineup.
It was the system seller for the PlayStation 3, but that's because it was the culmination of the trilogy at that point. So in 2010, God of War 3 released, and that was your PS3 system seller.
Right.
It was a
but
PSP
before
system
that,
seller.
in
It's
PS2,
always been smaller,
it wasn't like, here's Kratos, this is PlayStation now.
To be fair, he came in towards the end of the PlayStation 2. His second game, so God of War 2, could have easily been on PlayStation 3. The PlayStation 3 was out at that point, but it was a PlayStation 2 exclusive because the team making it thought they could do a better job on the older hardware than the newer one. And when they were going to the newer one, they were able to give it more room to grow and more effort to make it the best thing possible. And I mean, that game
Hey,
still holds
Nerds
up
World.
today. Hey, Nerds World. Yeah, that game still holds up today, but it never, because it was just a Western hack and slash, because it was just this game that was, a Western ripoff of Devil May Cry, people sort of poo-pooed it without giving it a go. And it was easily on par. Narratively, I would say far better, personally. And it was central to a lot of the ideas of PlayStation. But yeah, you're right. It wasn't until 2018's iteration that Kratos really stepped up and took center stage as the PlayStation mascot. But didn't need to be. There was Nathan Drake there, and then there was
Right.
Aloy there, and then there was Ratchet and Clank there, and then there was Jack and Daxter there. They've always had multiple different characters that for individual people are synonymous with the brand, and it's nice to have more than just one red-capped plumber, I think.
I agree. I agree. And I guess Jack and Dex never really evolved onto the next stage. They sort of Ratchet and Clank sort of took that mantle and moved forward.
It's always been Naughty Dog's way. They'll tell the story they want to tell with a set of characters and move on. So Jack and Daxter were their PlayStation 2 era characters, a bit more mature than Crash Bandicoot that had come before, a lot more story based. When they moved on to the PlayStation 3, they moved on to Nathan Drake. When they were done with Drake, they had The Last of Us. There was a bit of a crossover between Uncharted with Nathan Drake and then The Last of Us with Joel and Ellie. And they might now be done with Joel and Ellie. They're talking about a brand new single player IP, probably not coming back to The Last of Us
with
if that's the
Joel and
case.
Ellie.
I mean,
What
it
up,
can easily
Unitrix?
be. The great thing is that those stories at the end of each game, it can just finish there and everybody would be very happy with it. But it's good, bad, whatever. It is a finale, but they could always come back and do more if they so fancied as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's hard. It's hard to give up such a cash cow, though, right? Because if you do more with Joel and Ellie, you just make so much money.
Well,
But at the end,
with
it's
Ellie.
at the sacrifice of the story, right?
Yeah, it's like, don't pump things for more if it's not worth it. This is the sort of problem I've been having with the things like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They're pumping out stories because they're going to make $1 billion because it's got Marvel on the tin. I would rather you wait 3 years, just give you that one ultra solid, amazing experience like the Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse movies than pump it all out at once. And it's exactly the same feeling with video games. Give me a finished, complete experience that is bug-free, thought through from start to finish, and not released in, at best, a first draft phase like we've seen with so many games this year that just they don't hit any of the qualifiers to even be called video games on any platform. And we've seen them on PlayStation as well. I'm willing to wait for a good quality experience.
Well said. Well, if you're waiting, maybe you'll be dating in this hack and slash dating game. What? Okay. At first, I was like, there was no way I was going to cover this. But I looked at it and I
It
was
actually
like,
looks really good, yeah.
what is happening here? Look at this combat. Look, like he's freezing time, doing perfect dodges. Like, this looks so cool. This looks so cool. And then, what was it? The next step, he's doing squats with his girlfriend in a mini
Yeah.
game. I'm like,
Yeah.
and it does that not bear crazy resemblance to a certain somebody who also had their arm replaced by a glowing arm?
Maybe,
Link?
but it wasn't the first thought I had. My first thought was Persona. This has
Oh,
been
Persona.
sort of the core of the Persona series for years, where they've got the real world and then another world, or like you're living. It's a life simulator and then an action game within the life simulator sort of thing, and that's kind of what I feel like we're getting here. But it's a dating sim with an action game within it. There was a game launched last year, 2022, I think it was called Boyfriend Dungeon. Basically, the same idea. You go around, you collect a bunch of boyfriends who turn into your weapons that you then use in the dungeons, which are the random shops and stuff around Tokyo or something. When night falls, slay the demons, and then you go back to dating them during the day. And it's a genre that this genre exists. A lot of people like it. A lot of people play it. The combat looks amazing, and I really want to give it a go, but it is, as you say, a bit weird.
Yeah, it's another culture. It's another culture, and the combat to me looks so much fun. And then you just have this crazy, like, okay, I guess you're being social and you're dating at the same time as taking out these things. I have no idea how it's gonna work out, but it's just cool to see. Oh, and he just lost an arm. Yeah, that's gotta suck,
Yeah,
bro.
that's a 2 p.m. anime right there. Like you don't get censored that much in Japan.
Check it out. It's coming out at the end of September. But I just thought that was cool because I liked the combat when I saw that one.
Yeah, it's cool combat,
So
and I am interested in it, but it would be another one, either a bargain bin pickup or on the subscription service for me. It's not one I'd go out of my way to purchase and buy.
So this next article, I have one sort of choice for you. So a lot of these games, you have your choices. They're choice-driven narratives. Here on Fall of Revere's augural system brings the magic of clairvoyance to your choices. So my issue with these games is I always go evil. Like I always pick the evil choices. I'm like, give me this, you get nothing. Like that, I'm in it for the game for me. Like I'm trying to get me powerful. So when you come to games, do you have the same approach, or am I just a crazy person?
It very much depends on the type of moral game. Something like Infamous, where it's black or white, there is a good choice or a bad choice, and trophies tied to each side. I will go one
Ah,
or the
trophies.
other. But that's a very binary system. Like Fallout, for example, is much more grey, and I sort of come back to I can't remember which Star Wars game it was, but you were playing as a grey Jedi. I sort of go that middle ground. So I can be evil when needs to be, when I want to be. But if there is a less resistance route where I can just woo somebody or have a nice conversation, offer them dinner, that sort of thing, I'll take that route. Path of least resistance is probably the way that I play these most. And sometimes that is just chopping the heads off everybody in an area, and sometimes that is buying someone dinner.
I get it. I get it. You're a strategic player. Well, yeah, and check it out. There's the new How Harmony. It's a choice-based game. Probably won't be one for my playlist, but you know, that's games for all. That's what
I think it'd
they
be a
have
good,
now. So
yeah, I think it'd be a good stream game, that one, with it being choice based and you making choices. Like you could let the
oh,
chat interact with you for it.
it could be if you want to listen to chat and their craziness, but
Well, yeah, it'd keep
yeah,
things
it comes
interesting,
out
wouldn't it?
tomorrow. It
Oh,
comes out
brilliant.
tomorrow. Or no, sorry, not tomorrow. I don't know what day it is. It came out earlier this week, so just a couple days ago. So it's out now. Um, it's a choice based game. If you didn't know it existed, it's now on your radar. If you're into clairvoyance choice making, so that's cool to hear. Then we have Towers of Fantasy launching on August 8th. So when I hear this tower, whenever I hear tower in a name, I assume tower defense.
No,
But it seems to be an open world RPG.
it is from. I don't know if it's
Are,
the
are
same
first of all, are
studio.
you familiar with
I'm
this one?
very familiar with this game. Wibblesniff and Crash
Oh
Echo have
wow.
both played it. It's already out on PC and mobile. It's just now coming to PlayStation. It is a Genshin Impact clone. So it is
Ah,
a gacha
interesting.
game with all sorts of fantastical abilities and such. From what I've seen and what little I've played, it is not good enough for my stable of titles, but there are a lot of people who very much enjoy this type of Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, Tower of Fantasy. There's a couple more in that general genre, and they'll have a whale of a time with this. It's not really in depth. The story's a bit weak, and the acting is only half there. Like, it's literally only half acted. The rest of it is just text up on screen. So yeah, it's not for me, this one. I found it quite disappointing, but there'll be a lot of people who get a lot of joy out of it, especially in the gacha mechanics.
Well, it's a game that appeals to a mass audience. I'm sure they're bringing in a lot with those titles, with the Genshin. So look out for it August 8th if those types of games are on your radar. And Ken joined your stable, because unlike Dorogon, he only picks the horses he likes.
Well, yeah, it gets expensive if you pick all the horses. Got to feed them, clean up after them, make sure they've got a right size paddock for exercise, and so on and so forth. And then if you don't do anything with them, the horse falls over and dies, and it's a waste of money. Obviously, the horse is the video game here.
Yes, yes. That was the blog for this week, but I wanted to ask you a bit about the FTC hearings. And so my understanding is some developments I learned this week from reading some things was that the whole thing with Starfield was that it was supposed to be a PlayStation 5 exclusive. And at that point, Microsoft said, hey, wait a minute, we don't want this happening. And they pulled the big trigger and ended up buying ZeniMax altogether to keep it from coming on to PlayStation. And that's how Bethesda even jumped on board. So all these things are getting released. It seems to be a big exclusive battle. What kind of insights can you bring into this? What's been developing over the past week here?
So I have been reading up on the inputs daily. There's been some interesting revelations from both sides. So from the PlayStation side, Jim Ryan has literally said in an email, the Activision Blizzard acquisition by Microsoft wouldn't harm PlayStation at all, because they would be stupid to take any of the Activision Blizzard titles off of PlayStation where they make the most money. So that sort of shot any form of injunction in the foot from an FTC perspective. But America doesn't have, or the United States of America don't have the sort of regulatory bodies like, say, New Zealand do, like the UK do, that look at a much wider spectrum of just corporate competition and how it would affect things and people on a ground level. For me, I still don't think it should go through, but based on what this is, it's just a legal battle of, can we buy it, can we not? Is it fair to buy it? Is it fair to not? Both sides have shot themselves in the foot regularly. Microsoft coming out with that, it's like, oh, we wanted to stop them going exclusive, so we just bought the entire company. Like, who on earth has that spending power? Like, to just go casually one day, oh, we'll just buy the company out so that they don't get that singular game. That is a little bit ridiculous. The contract law that's coming into it as well, with like the Disney Indiana Jones one. Right. They've breached contracts with Disney. That's a big, powerful company that can take on the might of Microsoft at full tilt. They're both multi-trillion-dollar companies. There's no way they can't fight one another to the death, sort of thing. And it might end up being such a thing if they go at one another. There was the Activision skullduggery as well. They were not going to put Call of Duty on Xbox because Xbox weren't paying as much as PlayStation. And that was an Activision choice. That wasn't a Sony choice. Sony struck a deal, drew up a contract. This is how much we'll pay to have Call of Duty on PlayStation and to use it within our advertisements as it is on our console, and so on and so forth. And they ended up paying a lot more than Microsoft. And it wasn't until this latest generation, the Series S and X, that Activision turned around and said to Microsoft, you need to pay us more to have Call of Duty. Was that the precursor to them just buying them out rather than paying more or something?
Wow, could have been.
What
That's
I've got from
insane.
this is that Sony is the incumbent market leader. They don't really need to do anything to stay in that position. They don't need to do anything different than what they're already doing. Microsoft playing this whole underdog card is the most disingenuous, barefaced lie I've come across in corporations for a while. And we've all known that you can't be a $3 trillion company and be the underdog. There's just no way. They have more capital than most of Europe combined, just putting it in perspective, like as countries. Like one company, like no one should have that sort of power of wealth to just throw around, which is why I'm liking that there are governing bodies out there looking at this with industry experts, which is where the FTC are falling down by just throwing lawyers at it who haven't got a clue how video games work. So I think it's going to change people's views of both platforms quite drastically, and all for the negative. And I also think that it's going to go straight through because the incompetence being shown on both sides is astronomical.
Wow. Well, I guess we just get to read along as these documents get revealed to us. But we get to see a little bit behind the curtain and these dealings that are happening. And I got to say, when it comes to it, I do respect the move of having third party gaming industry and working. They're giving them essentially, Sony's giving them bonuses for creating games on their platform. That's giving these developers more money and creating better games, more resources. Where Xbox just goes ahead and buys the company from underneath it. I feel like this is
Well,
a
now
different practice of business, which is harder to respect. And I
they
don't
did
feel
the
it's a fertile
they
ground for creativity.
no, that it's not. But they did this with Tomb Raider. Microsoft had Rise of the Tomb Raider as a console exclusive for 12 months. PlayStation had Deathloop as a console exclusive for 12 months, and Ghostwire Tokyo as a console exclusive for 12 months. Xbox have always had the spending power to be able to do exactly the same as PlayStation and get third-party developers to make something for their console that will be exclusive for 12 months or longer. But for some reason, they haven't done it before. And they're now at the point of, rather than following that suit, bringing the good games, because despite what Phil, what's his face, says, not Harrison, he's the one who killed every platform, isn't he? Killed Sega, killed Stadia, nearly killed PlayStation and Xbox. I don't know why anybody lets him near a company.
Harrison,
Phil
the
Spencer.
hitman?
Yeah, Harrison's the hitman. If you
Spencer's
want to kill a company, you hire him. But yeah, why
Spencer's the one
Spencer
who
hasn't
came
been
out
doing
and
this?
said they lost the console wars.
Yeah, we can't make a good game and it'll solve everything. No, one good game won't, but 12 good games would. That would change the landscape drastically. Get that
It
money
would.
out, ask people to make a game for your console, and then give them the opportunity to put it elsewhere 12 months later. And suddenly you've got a console war back on that's well matched and everybody's got the same sort of weaponry. Whereas just coming out of nowhere with a payment that at the time was 3/4 of the worth of your nearest competition, no one can compete with that. That's not fair competition.
Well, we'll see as the world progress. I mean, we're coming up to talks I've seen people say about PS6 and the next generation. I mean, we haven't even had the PS5 Pro come out yet. We're
I
gonna
would be
see
surprised if we
Xbox.
got a Pro. I would be very
You don't
surprised.
think we'll get a Pro?
I don't want a
I
Pro.
thought
I don't see the point in a
neither do
Pro.
I.
The reason we had it in the last generation with both the PlayStation and the Xbox was we went
Yeah,
from 1080p machines to 1080p machines. But during
makes
that
sense.
generation, out came 4K screens, out came HDR visuals, out came ray tracing and all this other amazing technology that took graphics fidelity and all this sort of stuff to other levels. And to be the best console on the market, you needed that mid-generation refresh. Still have it that the older games and older systems could play at that 1080p, but give us ones that could do the 4K as well. I understood the mid-generation refresh with the last gen, but we have the PlayStation 5, which is capable of doing 8K visuals. It just needs a firmware update to do it. But there are so few people on this planet with an 8K screen that it's just not worth the effort of putting that patch out for PlayStation. What you've also then got to face is that so many people don't have a 4K screen, which is the mid-range of what the PlayStation 5 can already do. So why are we talking about a mid-generation refresh? What's that going to do? Give us a few more frames for another 600-700 quid? Because it's going to be an astronomically priced system, with the current PS5 still being at £500. Who's going to buy that? It's not going to be your biggest fans. They've already got a system that can do everything that their hardware is capable of. It's not going to be the people who aren't already on board, because they're not going to go for the ultra expensive high-end one when there's a cheaper option there that does exactly the same for the stuff they've got at home. For me, if these rumors of a PlayStation 5 Pro are about as stupid as the rumors as the Switch Pro that we've had for a couple of years, they make zero sense. The company won't do it because it is just a loss-making initiative. Just give us a proper console generation and put whatever sort of resources would go into a pro console into game development, because end of the day, content's king, and right now so many gamers are starved of content.
That would be an excellent way to approach it. I hope so. I don't want there to be a pro, because that makes my model obsolete. But at the same time, I'll switch the topic shortly here before our end here. Why did my PS5 come with a disc drive? Come on, they're not even giving us discs anymore. Didn't they have that force? They should have removed the disc drive, or was it for backwards compatibility? Does PS5 have that backwards compatibility with the discs?
PS5 has backwards compatibility with the discs, but there are many, many more reasons. It's the same reason no country on this planet has gotten rid of physical money. This is going to get a bit socio-political here for the reasoning. I'm not trying to sway anybody's ideas or anything, but there is a reason that no country has got rid of physical cash. And that is because your most vulnerable people in society require it. If we move to an electronic funds system only here in the UK, people who are homeless, people who have lost a job, living in a hostel, living off the good graces of the people around them, they would not then be able to buy anything, because you need a physical address to own a bank account. You would need a bank account to have a bank card and pay for stuff with the electronic funds. And if you don't have an address, you can't have either of those things. So this homeless person is then stuck being homeless for the rest of their days, which could easily be through no fault of their own. It could just be a bad week in the economy, in the world, and they've lost everything in a singular moment. And suddenly, without physical cash existing, they're done. They may as well just go lie in a ditch and die. It's the same sort of thing with any industry that has physical media. It's why you still see brand new movies and TV shows releasing DVDs, 480p DVDs. And they do that because there are people who can't afford to upgrade. There are people who can't afford that subscription service to a 4K Netflix or to the base Netflix, even with the ads, because it is just that little bit too much that would push them over the edge of affordability. Whereas if there's that DVD, that someone has to buy that new, but then it goes into the second-hand rotation. You get more people coming in that way, which will then bolster sales for first-hands of the next release. It's exactly the same thing with video games. There are so many people who cannot afford a brand new video game, but physical editions mean that they can still buy it second-hand further down the line, because there are still so many people who buy it and sell it on to fund their next game. It's also a point of preservation. If we were to get rid of the disk drive and just have digital only, what would happen in 7 years when Sony tried to close down the PlayStation 5 store? How many games just disappear from existence? It would be in the hundreds if they stopped selling discs now at this precise moment in time, because they would release every single game for the rest of this generation up to 2028, according to the FTC hearings, as just a digital only copy. What happens?
I was trying to find
20 years down the
Ragnarok,
line?
but Ragnarok was just a code, because I got the physical game. It didn't come with a disc.
I have a disc for Ragnarok.
Really? Because I did not get the disc.
I've got the disc for I'm not getting a disc for Spider-Man 2 because for some reason that collector's edition doesn't come with one. So what I will do with that is buy a second-hand copy a little bit further down the line. But things like game preservation, there are over 100 games from the Nintendo 3DS that are no longer playable because Nintendo shut down the 3DS store 2 months ago and they never made physical versions of these titles. Like, there should be physical media. That always should be physical media, because the worst off in society, for many of them, that's the only way they're getting anything outside of just existing.
Well, that's the thing with Starfield, and I don't want to take the show too long, but Starfield has announced that it's just going to be a digital code inside the box.
Only going to be in the top most version of the game. So the $500-odd version isn't getting a physical game. All other versions will be getting a physical disc. This was reiterated and confirmed by Bethesda. Yes.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. But I'm telling you, I did not get the physical disc for Ragnarok. But yeah, maybe I did.
If you got the collector's edition, that makes sense.
No.
If you got the one with Mjolnir, the base one should have come with a disc rather than a code.
Okay. But yeah, thanks everybody. We're gonna wrap it up here as we're shooting around over an hour. I want to thank everybody for coming on in, hanging out with us as we were talking PlayStation this week. And I want to thank Dorgon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, as always, my beautiful, kind, amazing co-host.
Co-host in the Super PlayStation Bros. And with that, we will see you next week. Take care, everybody.
With the